We know that the Whipple Federal Building has been a real focal point of these immigration operations. There have been pretty steady protests there since Operation Metro Surge began. And Whipple is where the agents have been taking people who have been detained around the Twin Cities. We wanted to bring in our Corin Hoggard now, who is following this angle today and trying to help us understand some of what may be happening inside that federal building. So we have Corin on hand here. There he is. Hi, Corin. Thanks for jumping in here for a few minutes. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, yesterday I can mention this real quick. Our two senators, Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith, and Representative Kelly Morrison, they're all Democrats. Morrison's actually a doctor. They got their first access into Whipple yesterday. Congressional oversight is a thing that's supposed to happen with any federal buildings, but there has been a dispute over how quickly they were allowed to access. The Department of Homeland Security passed a rule that said that they had to give 7 days notice. And so they gave notice and then went yesterday. But then today, a judge has ruled that no notice should be necessary and our congressional members should be able to access any of these facilities at a moment's notice to conduct oversight.
Okay, so Representative Kelly Morrison has talked about, or I think released a video about some of the things that she saw. Tell us a little bit about what she is saying.
Her perspective is pretty unique in as much as she is a practicing MD, and she went in there looking at their medical situation. She said that there is no specific medical policy there, not a nurse present when she was there yesterday, no real medical care on site, which coincides with what we're hearing from folks who have been in there and then have been released later, including, we talked to a Libyan man who went in there and he's got a rare genetic condition that makes his skin very fragile, but they were putting him in the types of shackles that would rub his skin and create a problem. And he, eventually asked to go to a hospital because of blisters on his ankles and sores on his knees and things like that. He said that, basic medical care was denied to him. And Representative Morrison says that's because they just don't have it available there. It just doesn't seem to be there. ICE policy on detention says that they will ensure that detainees are treated humanely, protected from harm, provided appropriate medical and mental health care, and receive the rights and protections to which they are entitled. But our members of Congress there are saying that this is not what's going on there, and they're violating their own policy.
Do we know, Corin, is there a policy that says how long someone can stay, like the maximum someone can stay in that type of environment before they're then transferred somewhere else? Or do we know anything? Are we talking hours, days, weeks?
No, and depending on the person and the situation, these folks may stay at the Whipple building for a matter of minutes or days, but they are not subject to the same standards that our regular criminal process happens there. And in Minnesota and in most other states, if you are in custody, you have to be charged and be able to go see a judge. You have to be in court, within about 72 hours, basically 48 hours to, file a case and then another day to get into court. That's in most states. That's not universal to the entire United States, but there is always kind of that, there's a time frame by which you need to get in front of a judge to get due process. Well, for the most part, that's just kind of random for these folks from what we're hearing from the people who have been detained, some of them for days.
Yeah, did Representative Morrison have a chance to speak to any detainees or get any other information?
So I will interview her in about an hour. But according to the video that she did release, she did speak to a woman who said, there are no beds, there are no blankets, we're sleeping on the floor, it's incredibly cold. None of us actually got any sleep because we were shivering all night. We did talk to another detainee, Garrison Gibson, who was the guy whose, door got knocked down, and then he was taken to Texas and had to eventually be returned because of a Fourth Amendment violation there. He said that he was in a cell with a guy with scabies and they just, packed everybody in there, and there was no separations. And, now with the situation down in the Dilley camp down in the El Paso area with the measles going around there, and them stopping the movement within that camp, but there are concerns that, there could be an outbreak of measles in a camp like that.
Yeah, and also I don't know if I have ever had a chance to get this question answered, but I'd be curious, in a federal facility like that, you'd think there would be cameras everywhere. I'm curious if Representative Morrison would have an answer to that, and, are there, and is there surveillance of the things that have been happening in there to sort of confirm or contradict what anybody might be saying?
I'll ask her, but she didn't mention that. And I haven't heard, I have talked to myself to several people who've been detained there. None of them mentioned that they saw any kind of cameras. They did say they saw a lot of chaos. One of the U.S. citizens who was detained there, who I talked to, said, nobody seems to know what anybody else is doing here. Nobody's got a key for this door. Nobody knows where the bathroom is, etc. And so he didn't think it was, cruelty on purpose, but he felt like it was cruel just the way that it was set up, that nobody seemed to know, the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing.
Interesting. Okay, well, thanks. And looking forward to chatting with you after you chat with Representative Morrison to see what else she has to say there. I think that's been one of the, maybe mysteries, not the right word, but I think we've talked so much about the federal Whipple building and not knowing kind of, here's story. It's this place that's it's like a forge. You're not gonna get in. You're not gonna lay eyes on things. So to have somebody go in there is really kind of an interesting opportunity to hear from somebody who saw some things for themselves. All right, Corin.
Particularly interesting to me because the folks down at Whipple had 7 days notice that these people were going to come, and so this is what it looks like when they know that there's going to be oversight.
Good point. Yeah. All right. Okay, we'll check in with you a little bit later. Thank you. See you in a bit.